What's up, folks? Anthony Armstrong here, former NFL receiver and host of Believe in Commanders. And with the basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League. It's a league specifically created for combo projections that includes 2 or more players from different sports or leagues. Make your way over to prizepicks.com/believe and use the code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for a first deposit match up to $100. You must be present in certain states. Visit prizepicks.com for restrictions and details. Pick more or pick less. It's that easy. Prize Picks.
Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
Ich warte seit Wochen auf diesen Tag und tanz vor Freude über den Asphalt. Als wär's ein Rhythmus, als gäb's ein Lied, das mich immer weiter durch die Straßen zieht. Komm dir entgegen.
Hello and welcome to Gegenpressing, the Bundesliga podcast from the Football Grad Network. I'm your host, Bryce Dunn, and joining me, as always, is Chris Williams. Chris, how's your week been?
It's been busy. All the weeks are rolling into one at the moment, Bryce. So when you asked me then, I was thinking, what did I do this week? I can't really remember. It's Champions League week and Europa League week. Yeah, I've had a very busy week. Yeah, it's been good. Thank you. How's you?
It just seems like game after game at the moment. It's great, really.
And we're not even in December yet, so it's going to get even worse.
Yes, it is. Well, we're going to have the winter break, I suppose, but not for another few. Joining Chris and I, as always, but as last week, he's across the water. He's actually in Europe. Is Manu Veth. Manu, how have you been?
Yeah, as you said, there's been a lot of games. So I've been to, I want to say 4 in the last 5 days. That sounds right, doesn't it? You want me to count them? I think that
it's been quite a few.
It's been a few.
But really, you should have gone to 5.
Yeah, no, we thank you, Gladbach, for not accrediting us. I have to really say it. But yeah, it should have been 5. We missed that one, unfortunately. But you know what? Köln did. So that was good. And then, of course, we had that midweek game in Basel. Fantastic city and fantastic club as well. I really enjoyed that one. It's been a brand new experience. I've never been to a Swiss club before, and I really enjoyed it.
Seems like you're having a great time, which is fantastic and good for all of the fans of the Football Grad Network. But let's jump into one of the games that you went to over the weekend, and that was Hanover versus Stuttgart. This was the Friday night game, which ended 1-1. Both the promoted sides having a fairly good season. And Manu, what was the game like? And well, you know, are these two typically promoted sides? Would you describe them as? I think they're a little bit more than that, aren't they? I mean, they're both, well, German football giants, really.
Oh yeah, I really enjoyed this game actually, and I enjoyed the atmosphere in Hanover too. I know there is some issues between the ultras and the ownership, and of course, you know, the whole controversy with Martin Kind, the president, taking over the club, or having now put in motion the takeover of the club. And this is, of course, the DFL rules of the 50+1 rule allow you to become the majority owner if you have invested continuously for 20 plus years, which has been the case as of this year for Martin Kind. So there's a bit of a conflict between the ultras and the, I guess, soon ownership of the club. And you could sense that a little bit. So the ultras, the first few minutes of every game, they boycott they do an atmosphere boycott, as they call it. But you know, but despite this, I thought it was a really fascinating game to watch, and the atmosphere is really good. The HDI Arena, I think, is one of the more underrated facilities in Germany. You know, it fits 50,000 people. It's a beautiful facility. It's fantastic to watch football there. And the city of Hanover is a great city too. You can walk from downtown to the stadium, and there's lots of little beer pubs and breweries and, you know, Kneipen, as they say in Germany. And I thought that was a really good atmosphere. And the game itself was good too. You know, it doesn't look like two promoted sides. And both teams have put significant money into the squad. And they both play in a 3-4-3 system that of course, in a 3-4-3 system, if you have to have two teams playing each other again in that formation, you get a lot of open play, and they both play really quickly through midfield, and that makes it very enjoyable. And I mean, Chris, both those teams beat Borussia Dortmund already this year, so they're not poor sides at all.
No, they're not. And I really enjoyed the Friday night game. Thought it was a good start to the weekend. I'm not sure we're going to get into that, but that's probably not the greatest marker stick you want to use at the moment, saying a team beat Borussia Dortmund, they've been dreadful. But yeah, I mean, I'm surprised that Hanover and Stuttgart have got off to the start that they did. But I suppose we shouldn't really be that surprised because of the squad they've got in both teams. Have got a good squad in depth, and they've both got good head coaches as well. So yeah, it was a very, very enjoyable game. I think it probably set the tone because Saturday was a barnstormer, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, and it did set the tone. I think this is actually something in general I noticed. We've complained a little bit in the beginning of the season, and I think a lot of that stemmed from the poor showing in the Europa League and the Champions League of German sides, that the league has lost a little bit of quality. But I actually think in the last couple of weeks that quality has increased significantly. The football's gotten a lot better over the last 2-3 weeks, and I think this weekend and especially there's a lot of teams are playing better football, and it's showing throughout the standings.
Yeah, that's it, and it almost creates a bit of inconsistency, doesn't it, with the different results throughout the league, because everything's so tight and quite fascinating. Chris, looking at these two sides, I mean, we spoke in previous weeks about how good a season they're both having. Where do you see them both finishing? Come the end of the season, and have they now got to this stage of the season and they thought, let's try and push for Europe, for example, rather than just stay in the league?
I don't think either of these two sides can do that. Let's just look who's at the top. Obviously, Bayern at the top. Then we've got Leipzig, Schalke, Gladbach, Dortmund, Leverkusen, and Hoffenheim. I mean, that's the top seven. So I can't see anyone really breaking into that top seven at the moment. I think they're the 7 best teams in the league, and it will probably be those 7 teams in a random order from second down to 7th, and it could be any order at the moment because they seem to be flitting from week to week. So, bearing that aside, I think Hanover are currently 10th and Stuttgart are 12th, and that would be very respectable for both sides who were promoted last season to finish mid-table. I don't think they would be unhappy with that. I would hate to see one of them go down. I can't really see Stuttgart or probably even Hanover joining the likes of Hamburg and Freiburg down at the moment. I think Bremen and Cologne are just in real deep trouble. So in answer to your question, Bryce, I think they're going to stay whereabouts they are. So anywhere between 10th and 13th at the end of the season could be considered good for the pair of them.
This is actually something that's really become noticeable now in the last few weeks, is that there is no weak side in this Bundesliga right now. Even Köln, that are all the way down at the bottom. We're going to talk about them in a moment a bit more. They don't have a poor side. It's just that the league is very, very competitive right now. I mean, Bayern are losing games on a regular basis this season as well, and it's because the 2 sides that went up are 2 big sides. So there is no natural team that everyone beats up on. I mean, yes, Köln, everyone beats up on Köln right now, but no one would have predicted that ahead of the season, right? So it's a bit of it's a league that is very even right now because all the teams that are in it are very strong. And because of that, it's harder for big sides like Hannover and Stuttgart that got promoted to break into the very top, like Freiburg did last year, for example.
Yeah, I think if you look across the league, you do have Dortmund, Schalke, Bayern Munich, and Hoffenheim, all big sides, all drop points this weekend. So I think that just goes to show how competitive things are at the moment. But yes, let's speak a little bit about Hanover and about Cologne. We're going to talk about sporting director Horst Held from Hanover. He previously played in midfield for Cologne and Stuttgart, actually. But it seems like he may be going to Cologne, Manu. What's the reaction in Hanover here? And is this a done deal or is it just rumours?
Oh no, it's definitely not a rumor. Horst Held told us this much that it isn't. He told that he wants to talk to Köln, and Martin Kind is letting him talk to Köln. But Kind also said today that Held is staying 1,000% in Hanover. Now, of course, 1,000% in football means not that much. The word is that I've learned in Hanover is that Hanover want 2.5 million euros from Köln if they want to get held as a sporting director. That's a lot of money for someone who doesn't play football anymore, right? We're talking basically a director getting paid out to move from one club to another. But Held really wants to go to Köln. That's his city. He's born and raised there. He played for Köln, for the FC, as they say around here, for quite some time, and he wants to go back. He said in interviews in the past that one of his dreams is to build something in Köln, and it is remarkable because he's done a very, very good job in Hanover to build a team that's very competitive. I think he was 5 years in Schalke, and 4 out of those 5 years that team reached the Champions League. So, he's done a very good job in the past with different teams. He, of course, when he was the sporting director at Stuttgart won their last title. So, he is someone who is maybe even underestimated a little bit. And that makes him a hot commodity. So, Köln really want him. Horst Held wants to move there. Hannover is, of course, saying no. But I talked to someone in Hannover who was quite well networked. And he was saying basically it's just a matter of money. And that if Köln would pay 2.5 million euros, they would get the man. Because the problem is, of course, if you say no to Horst Held and he wants to go, that's really not going to work either, right? Because you're going to have basically theater from now till the end of the winter break. And Köln, of course, need to make massive changes during the winter break, and they need to have a sporting director to do so. So I can see right now, this is all more or less a poker game. So Martin Kind saying he's staying 1,000%. I'm not sure if that really meets 1,000%.
It'll be easier for him to build a house, I think, than build a team in Cologne, if that's what he's aiming to do. But let's go to you, Chris. And just I want to ask them, 2.5 million, to bring in a sporting director. Is the sporting director worth that type of money? I mean, what all is involved in the role of a sporting director? Can he change a club's fortunes? That's what I'm trying to ask.
Yeah, I think he can if he was to come in, because he's got the time. That's probably why they want that sort of money, because they know how desperate Cologne are. And if he comes in within the next few days or the next week or so, he's able to get his teeth into a project to rebuild over the winter break. So, he can help direct the club off the field in the correct way. Obviously, it'll be up to the coach, but the sporting director will do everything else. He'll look at player recruitment, he'll look at player retention, he'll look at player ins and outs. And don't forget, we've got a 4-week break coming up. So in those 4 weeks, someone as well known and as well versed as Hess could do a lot for Cologne in those 4 weeks, which is probably why they're very keen. And being so keen, I suppose Hanover hold all the keys, don't they, to letting them go. And I mean, you can say, is he worth 2.5 million euros? But I think he will be if he comes in, he gets to do what he needs to do over this winter break, and then he can rebuild again in the summer, and somehow Cologne stay up. I think that's worth 2.5 million euro of anyone's money.
And Manu, obviously, Chris has just explained what exactly his role would be, and how the money would be well spent. But I mean, how good is he at his role? How successful has he been at the previous clubs that he's been at? He's been at Hanover, he's been at Stuttgart as well, and Schalke. Is he known as one of the better sporting directors out there?
I think he is. He was underrated for a long time. But look, when he was the sporting director at Stuttgart, they won the championship. When he was sporting director at Schalke, they reached the Champions League in every single year except for one. And in that year, they still managed the Europa League. And he was let go. And the year after, when Christian Heidel, this highly rated sporting director, of course they're doing well now, but in the first year under Christian Heidel, they finished outside of the European places. So, he gets the job done. At Hanover, he came in halfway through the season, last year, of course, and made the changes necessary and brought in the coach, André Breitenreiter, that guided him back to the Bundesliga. And then he purchased the kind of players that now got Hanover to do as well as they do. Someone like Ilas Bebo, fantastic signing. Jonatas signing from Rubin Kazan that no one had on his radar. And, he's very good at putting together teams. And given the right amount of money and the connection that he has, he can do the exact same thing in Köln. So Yes, I think he's absolutely worth it, and I think it's actually kind of funny that no one in the past has mentioned his name. The funny thing is, though, to Bryce, he doesn't feel himself valued enough in Hannover either. The big problem is the way Hannover is structured as a club. He wants to have a position on the board, and in Köln they're offering him a position on the board on top of his sporting director position, and the sporting position on the board is in the hands of Martin Andermatt. He is a former Swiss national team player who is the sort of the right-hand man of Martin Kind. And Andermatt has tried to interfere with some of Horst Held's work, and Held actually almost stepped down ahead of the season. And I think the one way they could keep Held at Hannover is by giving him that position on the board and let go of Andermatt, to basically say, okay, well, fine, we're going to hand you the club, right? We're going to give you all the decision making, and we're going to finally value you. But at the same time, I think that would be difficult because, if home calls, it's really, really hard to not deny that to someone.
Yeah, it certainly is. It's definitely going to have a pull more than the majority of places or clubs, even though they may be in a relegation spot at the moment. It's definitely going to have the pull, and he may end up there. We'll just have to see how that one pans out. But Manu, we'll go back to you and we'll just talk about Cologne a little bit. You seen them midweek, didn't you? They took on Arsenal in the Europa League and managed to come away with a 1-0 win, which is rather unexpected. How was the game?
I thought it was actually really poor, Bryce, to be quite frank.
I'm sure Cologne will take that 1-0.
They will take that.
In a poor performance, they'll take that.
And it's funny because this was the first time I've actually had a real 90 minutes to completely focus on a game that involved Köln. And a lot of things became quite clear to me on what the issues are. I think what Köln lack, there's been a lot of complaints about John Cordoba, and I feel really sorry for him. But when you watch the way they play, and that's 3-4-3, what they lack is someone who can string them together. There seems to be a bunch of individuals playing, trying to work things out. The paths that they're running, then they're never quite clear. There was a couple chances that, for example, where Cordoba would receive the ball, hold the ball, and then wait for someone to make the run up front, and that person was usually Osako. And so many times, instead of making the overlapping run, Osako would just run in a straight line into the middle of nowhere. And that just shows to me that the lines of communications aren't there. There isn't someone in midfield who can string them all together. Last season, that was, of course, Matze Lehmann, but Lehmann has been having so many fitness problems that he can't do it. And the other guy that's missing is Jonas Hector, right, the national team player. And he's just, that is two things that are just lacking. When you see them running across the pitch, you don't see a philosophy there. And you could say that's coaching, but I don't think it is coaching in this case. There seems to be, what's lacking is the right kind of players. And there has been a lot of criticism of Cordoba, but you can't blame a kid like Cordoba for A, not receiving the right balls, and B, his teammates not making the correct runs. And the other thing that I would have noticed, and this is something that I really noticed today, they have a guy like Guirassy, who's basically a one-to-one copy of John Cordoba. So sometimes they're playing the two together. They're both two big physical strikers, but they both love to hold the ball. And then there's no one that actually finishes what they do. And I think that is one big issue. Now, against Arsenal, they were fine because Arsenal were even worse than they were, right? So they got the result because, one of them actually managed to score a goal. But in the Bundesliga, even against the side, like Hertha, there's been a lot of complaints about Hertha Berlin and how boring they are, but they're very well organized. And so for Hertha, it was very easy to break down this Köln side because they were able to close down the pathways, they were able to close down the attacking line, and then they were able to just break them down with the usual boring play that Hertha play. But it's so well structured that it just worked for them, and that is the one thing that I've really noticed about Köln in the last two games, in the last 180 minutes that I watched them.
Yeah, that's it. They've definitely not made for entertaining watching, have they? Unfortunately. Chris, if we just look at the Europa League before we move back to the Bundesliga, That means that Cologne have actually moved up to third in that group. A very tight group. You've got Arsenal sitting in 10 points. Then you've got Partizan Belgrade with 6 points, or Red Star Belgrade, sorry, with 6 points. Cologne on 6 and BIT Borisov on 5. Do you see Cologne managing to get a second spot through to the knockout phase?
I think if they do, it'll be horrendous for them. I think they need to drop out of the Europa League and just concentrate fully on Bundesliga survival. I can't see how getting through to the new year and still having to play at the weekend and midweek is going to do them any luck whatsoever to stay in the league. So it would maybe in their best interest to bow out of it. However, can I see them getting through? Potentially, yeah. I mean, obviously, I was there for the Arsenal Red Star game. I'm going to be there for the Arsenal Bait game, obviously, because Football Grad Network covers Bait Borisov as well as the Cologne game. So it'll be interesting to see. I can't see Arsenal putting out an exceptionally strong side. Probably similar sort of level to what they put out to Cologne. So I mean, yes, they have an opportunity, but I would probably err on the side of not doing it if I was Peter Stoger. I would want to concentrate purely on Bundesliga. I mean, he might not even have a job there when we come back after the midweek break, the mid-season break. But if he has got a job, he'll want to concentrate fully on the league.
Yeah, Chris, and it was you and I that were just saying that things are looking pretty grim in the league, and that they really, well, we say this every week, they need to pick up a win, and they failed to do it once again today, didn't they? You had an interesting fact actually about Hertha. They hadn't won in, was it 15 away games?
Yeah, so they'd only won one of their last 15 away games before they won today. So when you are ending that sort of a run for somebody, it's not your season, and it just seems to be the same thing that's happening week in, week out for Cologne. They're getting beat by teams that realistically, going on last season and what we've seen in the past couple of seasons, they should be doing a lot better. And they've got really good players. They've got Asako Cordoba, as we spoke about. They've got Pizarro as well, and I thought they were a good side if you take them individually, but together for some reason they just look lost, and it's a transition between the lines where they look lost, and then when they seem to go that goal down, or it doesn't seem to be going their way, they seem in that spiral of underconfidence, which is going to really affect them. And how do they break free of that? That's up to the coach. It's the head coach that needs to get inside the players' head and lift them and lift their performances and work on the elements where they're getting picked apart time and time again. So you look at today, if you look at their front three that they started with, they're okay. They're good players, and the four behind them are okay. You've got Lemon at the back. You've got Timo Horn, who's in goal, who is a good keeper, and he made a couple of good saves again today, but they were still beaten. So, yeah, it's not looking good for them, Bryce. I remember it was match day 3. I said if we get through to match day 10 and they haven't won, they'll probably go down, and I'm not going to deviate from that line now. I think poor old Cologne, if we get to the midwinter break and they still haven't picked up 3 points from a win in the Bundesliga, I think we can say there that it's done. I mean, in fact, it's the worst start, to a Bundesliga season in years, if not record, I think.
Yeah, they're in real trouble. I think before tonight there was still hope because it was only 6 points, right, if they had won. But now it's looking really grim. I think the big thing is too, Chris, they have 10 injured players right now. So they deputed the Jan Oral Bisek, who I actually thought was really good in defense, but he was only 16 years old. And the guys that they brought on, you know how they have this tradition in German football where the stadium announcer will say the first name, and then the crowd will shout back the second.
Yeah.
With one of the players that they brought on, the stadium announcer had to say the full name because no one knew who he was. And that's, it's hard to blame Peter Stöger for that because it's just real unlucky. It's kind of like that freak season that Dortmund had, where they dropped all the way down. It's so hard to explain in some ways. And with Köln, it's not in his hands really, because if you have so many injuries to key players, you can't play well. It's impossible.
I think, Bryce, the only bit of positive that they could take if they're going to look for any positives, from a defeat, is Bišček, is Jan Bistek, the young lad who's 16. So they have got someone there that can step up to first team football at the age of 16. So that's something they can take away from this game, no matter what. That he didn't look completely out of his depth. He didn't look, like it was a step too far for him. He looks like the sort of player who can grow and, hopefully be given the chance to develop. And if they do drop down, this is the sort of player they need to be bringing in to get some game time and hopefully to get them back up the season after.
I thought he was really good, actually, Chris. The only defensive mistake that they made was Matze Lehmann, right, when he brought down Schalke for that penalty spot. And Bisek, I looked at the stats. He didn't play a single pass to the opposition. Every pass was perfect, spot on. And playing a 3-man defense with a young lad like that, it's impressive. So he had a really good performance.
It seems like Cologne are continually having more shots than their opponents, but just can't seem to get goals, which is a bit of a shame. Manu, have you heard anything coming out of Cologne about Peter Stöger's position? Will he be there much longer? Obviously, Chris mentioned that it might be that he is off in the winter break for the obvious reasons. Do you see that happening, or will they stick with him and maybe go down with him and rebuild from there?
I think they're going to stick with him. That's the word in Köln. That they really believe in him, and that they believe that, if they fire him, they won't be able to get a coach like him again. So that's the one thing I find really amazing about this entire thing. The club has stayed really calm, because they said, okay, well, we have money. They announced just the other day in the Jahreshauptversammlung that they run a profit again. And they just know, okay, well, I guess if we drop down, then we drop down. It's best to stick with Peter Stöger and just rebuild and go straight back up, hang on to the majority of the players, and do what Freiburg has done for so many years. Just be consistent. Freiburg is a model club that way. When they go down, they would never fire their coach. And Toni Schumacher, the vice president, who has a lot of influence at the club, he was at the Doppelpass, the Sport 1 Doppelpass, which is a very big football talk show in Germany this morning. And he said, look, we're trying to just stay calm. We announced today that there's the 100th member has signed for the club. We're making money. We have no more debt. We sell out every single game. We haven't really done anything wrong. We just been unlucky. And I think there is a sense that if they fire the coach, they would go back to those chaotic times that they had before Stöger and Schumacher and all these guys came in. And so I think they don't want to risk that. So I can really sense that Stöger gets, even at the winter break, they might say, okay, well, we have no chance to really stay up. Let's start building. Bring in Horst Held, and let's start building a squad that we can take into Bundesliga 2 and then potentially move back up into the Bundesliga and stabilize.
Yeah, it mightn't be the worst plan at all there. A bit of sensible planning from Cologne. But let's move away from then and move further up the table. We're going to talk a little bit about Bayern and how they've struggled this last week, haven't they, Manu? I mean, they played to Anderlecht during the week in the Champions League, managed to win 2-1, but it wasn't a great performance, really, was it?
Oh yeah, it was very poor. And I guess it was bound to happen. There's a lot of injured players at Bayern too, and then they lost Thiago and Robin in this game. But I mean, we've said that now for weeks, right, Chris? That we've never actually seen Bayern being challenged by anyone. The big teams in Germany, Leipzig challenged them in the Pokal, and they were very unlucky to go out. And then the second game, they were given a very early red card and couldn't really challenge Bayern. And Dortmund, Dortmund were Dortmund. We'll get to them in a moment, I guess. So they haven't really been challenged, and now Anderlecht actually managed to challenge them, and they looked poor. And then, of course, Gladbach challenged them on the weekend, and they looked poor again. I think that was bound to happen. There was a real euphoria when Heinkes came back, and he stabilized, and he was able to talk to the players. But, they were kind of running on that fuel of euphoria when he came back, and the players were just happy that Ancelotti was gone, the regime was ended. And I think that's kind of run out now, and I'm really curious to see how they're going to get through December. There's a big key game coming up against PSG. Yes, it's not for first spot anymore because PSG have pretty much nailed that down, but it's still going to be an important game in terms of where they're standing. And I think the other thing is too, there's going to be a couple sides coming to Munich that play very good cultured football and are tactical, very astute, and could hurt them really badly. And I think that's going to be something very interesting to watch.
Chris, are you with Manu and think that maybe the early new manager high has fizzled a little bit with Bayern, and teams are starting to figure them out a little bit?
I agree entirely. I do agree entirely. I don't know if they're being figured out as such, or it's that, as we've said for months, maybe not for more than months now, it's that Bayern are getting towards the end of that time where all their type of excellent play a little bit older. And, we said the back end of last season that they need to reinforce in the summer. I don't think they did that to the extent that they would have liked to have done. They will definitely have to reinforce the summer coming. So I think it is, bursting of the bubble is probably the wrong word, but it's that new manager bounce has definitely started to turn a little. And, Gladbach are an excellent side, were very worthy of their win. And as Manu says, they have got a couple of games coming up. I mean, we've all seen the Hanover start to the season where they are after that, and Frankfurt can be, you don't know what you're getting when you go to Frankfurt. You could get the game of the season, or you could just steamroller. And then match day 16 looks a little bit of one in the bag, unless Cologne can surprise, the whole footballing world at the moment. And then it's another difficult away day at Stuttgart, which is where I'm hoping to be on match day 17. So I think the games that are coming up, they're going to have to really nail down their intention for the remainder of the season in those. If they drop points in the next couple of games, you can see the teams below them, Leipzig, etc., will certainly be buoyed by that. But as it stands at the moment, they just, I don't know, if I still can't see a Bayern Munich identity on the pitch, and I think that's something that's been lacking since Guardiola left. And Heinkes has come in and he's steered the ship back on track, but it's still the same problems that are going to rear up from when Ancelotti was there, not necessarily with the management style or the coaching style, but the problem they've had with the players and their aging ability, and that other teams now just don't seem to be scared of Bayern as they once were.
Yeah, I think that is a big factor, Chris. They're not scary. And even the game against Gladbach, you had a real sense before that game that Gladbach could walk away with a result. And this is a Gladbach side that lost 6-1 to Dortmund and 5-1 to Leverkusen, right? And really just put a string of good results together in the last few games. And I actually tipped 2-1 for Gladbach in my pre-match report. I just want to get that in there. But I had a sense that this is the game that Gladbach needed to prove that they are actually a side that's back in the top 6 in German football. And they did just that. Dieter Hecking has finally found a recipe to get that stability in midfield. Something that, of course, our friend John McKenzie has always complained about with the double pivot, that they didn't really quite figure out how to play that. And they've gotten that now, right? And it's I think that Gladbach have finally, they can be a team that can really hurt the big sides going forward. And Bayern, on the other hand, and this is this lack of identity. It's just they don't have any players that can play on the wing right now. When I looked at the potential formation that they had, the 4-1-4-1, they played Tolisso, Rudi, Vidal, all in midfield. And these are all players that like to go through the center, right? But Heinkes' football has always been wing player, and he doesn't have those players right now. And those two players that does have, they always hurt because they are getting old, right? So it's this lack of identity and this lack of future vision is something that I think they kind of were able to hide a little bit in the first few weeks under Heinkes. And I don't know, I think they were running on these fumes, and I think that's kind of gone now.
And Chris, just to talk about Heinkes for a moment, Hunters has said recently that he would like him to stay on beyond this season. I mean, it's a bit of a step in the wrong direction, is it? No, it's almost pressing pause or rewind rather than fast forward, isn't it?
Well, I think Matt Hummels probably knows who's going to replace him, and that's probably why he wants him to stay on. So yeah, I think Matt Hummels should probably concentrate on playing football and less talking about what manager or head coach should be coming in.
Yeah, I think there was also the statement by Uli Hoeneß, the president, who said, "Oh, why shouldn't we go on with Jupp Heynckes and hang on to him?" And there's a lot of people in Munich that would like to keep going with Jupp Heynckes, but Jupp Heynckes has said very clearly that he's not going to stay. And I have a feeling too that Jupp Heynckes, that Hoeneß has said that Jupp Heynckes could potentially stay on. That's a distraction to basically get the attention away to the name that we're all expecting to take over. And I think Mats Hummels has a certain opinion about the coach who could come in or is probably going to come in. I've talked to some people today who are quite well connected to Thomas Tuchel and said that that's the very, very likely, this is not from me personally, but the person I talked to said when Thomas Tuchel is signing at Bayern in the summer, then they're going to get the best coach in Germany. And I think that makes a lot of sense. Thomas Tuchel is a fantastic coach, and you can see the differences that at Borussia Dortmund right now since he's left, and what happened under him and what's going on right now. It's quite fascinating, and I think Bayern München are going to do quite well if Thomas Tuchel, once again, this person seemed to be quite certain it will be Thomas Tuchel. I'm gonna still put the if until the paper and the ink dries on that sentence, but I think Thomas Tuchel, if he takes over Bayern, I think he will do a fantastic job there, and he will sort out that club. There will be lots of changes coming, as I hinted before. One of the reasons why Thomas Tuchel did not sign right away is because he was quite clear that it will be the end of Frank Ribéry and Arjen Robben. He will get rid of those players and replace them. And you could imagine the circus, if Thomas Tuchel had signed in October, and we would all have known that it would be the end of Ribéry and Robben by the summertime. But you would still have to work with these players, and I can sense that was probably an obstacle and why all parties decided to wait a little bit with the signing.
Well, Hoeneß also spoke this week, didn't he, about bringing in younger players and focusing on the academy rather than splashing out on big name players. Chris, if we do see Tuchel come in, do you see him possibly taking some of the previous players that he's worked with to Bayern? Obviously, Bayern have the money and pulling power. Would he try to go to Dortmund and poach a few of them?
I doubt it. I doubt he would do that. I could only see him trying to pinch those who he desperately wanted. He fell out with a lot of players towards the end of the term while he was there, especially if you look at the Pokal final, with the fallout he had with Sahin, etc. So I don't know if many would follow him, and I don't think that would be his plan there anyway. And as you've said, Bayern need to recruit from within. They were always very good at developing their own players and having Bavarians in the side. So I think that would be one of his key attributes that he's given as a challenge to do, is to steer Bayern back to the top of the Champions League, but bring through the next generation of big players and buy if they had to. But I can't see them going out and buying anyone from Dortmund. Maybe they could go and pick up some of the players from within the league, but he's got elements there that he could work with, Sula, Rudy, etc. So it would be a good signing for me if he was to go. It's whether he does go, and we'll have to wait till the end of the season. But whoever goes into Bayern needs to start to get their academy producing excellent players and bringing them through. It should be one of the best sausage factories for German national players in the entire league.
Well, they spent 70 million euros on that academy. It's a lot of money. The Bayern Academy, it's a gorgeous facility. It's huge too. But yeah, 70 million euros. They were saying in the summer, of course, they're quite proud of that investment, and they were saying that that was our Neymar. And if you spend that kind of money, you expect it to produce, young players. And there's a few in the academy. Tielemans is one of them, and I can sense that some of them will come through. Batista Maia, of course, the Brazilian German that's playing in the youth academy, is another big name coming through. And I think it's only going to be a matter of time, and they will need a coach who's willing to play these players. And Thomas Tuchel is exactly that kind of coach. And I think it makes sense. On the other hand, it is typical Uli Hoeneß. And I'm not certain that this strategy alone will allow Bayern to stay on the top level in Germany, especially when you look at the likes of Leipzig that are building and going to challenge them. I think in this season already, it's only 3 points, right, in the table between the two sides right now, something that we need to talk about as well. And I think Leipzig in the long run is really going to challenge Bayern just because of the resources that they have. And, of course, internationally, you look at the likes of PSG that are spending a lot of money. I think just youth players is not going to be enough. They, of course, said that they're not going to go after someone like Antoine Griezmann. I think that's a big mistake. I think they need to. They need to go and sign marquee players. You cannot replace Arjen Robben and Frank Ribéry in the short term by spending 70 million euros on the youth academy alone. And they need to bring in a second striker. They need to buy someone who can back up Robert Lewandowski, simply because Robert Lewandowski is going to be 30 years in the spring. And that's an age where, he's going to be aging as well. And Thomas Müller, everyone always says, well, Thomas Müller can play there. Thomas Müller is not going to be a 30-goal scorer every season. That's just simply not going to happen. So they need to invest in that. These youth players, the U17, of course, came second. They're not going to be able to be world stars next season. So I think there is a certain hopefulness that Bayern can stay Bayern and that Hoeneß can sort of turn back the clock. I don't think it's going to work, though.
Well, just one final note on Bayern. Sandro Wagner, could he be that second striker that they need? He's been linked with them recently, Chris. I mean, Sandro Wagner, pretty good striker, eh? He'd be a good second choice, but would he want to move there ahead of the World Cup?
Oh, that's a great question, Bryce. He would be an excellent choice as a backup. It's whether he wants to play. I mean, we've seen him maybe quieten down a little than if you compare him to last season where he was absolutely flying. But he's still playing well. He's still getting the assists. He's still getting the goals when required. I personally think he's a very good player. I thought he was good today, even though Hoffenheim were beaten. I didn't think they were as poor as what the scoreline suggested. But I think he's ready. He's probably ready for himself to make that challenge up. I don't think he would. If he moved in the summer, would it affect his ability to play in the national side? I mean, we've talked at length, haven't we, that Joachim Löw could pick 3 different sides or 3 starting 11s, and he could win a World Cup with all of them. So it's whether he gets in there anyway. If he's at Bayern Munich, that may carry a little bit more weight. It may not carry a little bit more weight. He needs to look a little bit further than that. This is going to be the last World Cup he plays in, and he's going to be playing league football week in, week out for the remainder of his career. So if I was him and it was offered, I would jump at the chance to join Bayern.
Yeah, Hoeneß said today that it's unlikely to going to happen because Hoffenheim is asking for too much money. So, and I think this is typical Hoeneß too. We see strikers of Wagner's caliber changing clubs for 30-40 million euros, and Hoeneß has offered 10 million euros to Hoffenheim. I can see why Hoffenheim is saying no, but thanks. I think there's something funny going on at Bayern right now that I have a feeling they're trying to turn back the clocks a little bit, and it's not quite working.
Well, guys, I feel after all that Bayern talk, we really need to talk about Borussia Mönchengladbach. The side went up to 4th in the table, picking up 10 out of their last possible 12 points. And yeah, in the late kickoff, they beat Bayern Munich 2-1. Chris, just how good were Borussia Mönchengladbach. And, I feel that, yes, everyone's talking about the downfall of Bayern, but we really need to talk about how good they've actually been this season.
Yeah, they have good. They were very good, Bryce, when I went to see them pre-season when they played over at Leicester City. I thought they were good then. They were good value for their play. I think they've got some great players within their squad. I mean, I love Stindl. I like Raphael. Hazard is, obviously an excellent player and comes from a caliber of excellent players, but it's the guys at the back as well. Vestergaard, Ginter is even, chipping in with goals now. Vent's been there. Kramer's picked up an injury, which is hopefully not going to be too bad. I think what was worse for Gladbach is that Janška, who came on, also picked up an injury. That's exceptionally bad luck. But Manu mentioned earlier about the double pivot that John McKenzie, who we all know very well, has talked a lot about. And in Dennis Akira, and when they did have Kramer playing, I think that's a good pair in there, and that's done them well so far this season. And in any league, in any country, you don't get to be in the top 4, top 5, top 6 without they're on merit. I mean, and they're there on 4th, and it's a very strong league. And we spoke earlier in the season how we expected the likes of Gladbach, Schalke, and Leverkusen to be a lot more improved than they were last season, and that's shown to form already with Gladbach sitting in 4th, Schalke in 3rd, and Leverkusen up to 6th. So the traditional bigger 3 teams that fell out of the contention last season have definitely come back with a bang, and I only think it's not much of a surprise. It's more of a reassurance that the league is back to its healthy best again.
Yeah, most certainly. Manu, do you see Gladbach being able to push for not just a European spot, but possibly be able to push on for a Champions League spot?
I think it all depends on what's going to happen in Dortmund, to be honest.
Well, we've got plenty to talk about that in a minute.
Yeah,
but,
I see right now the Bayern, Leipzig, Schalke will finish in a Champions League spot, and then it will really depend on what's going to happen in Dortmund and my friends in Leverkusen that have been slowly but surely climbing up the table. They're now in 6th, and they're in that Champions League reach now too. And I think that right now, I think it really, squad-wise, I think Dortmund are probably still the second best team in Germany. But, I mean, obviously there's so many issues there right now that it really depends on how they're going to solve them. And if Dortmund continue to struggle, I could see 1 or 2 teams finish ahead of them. And then maybe, yeah. And keep in mind, this year, all the 4 teams go straight to the Champions League group stage, right? Because of the Champions League reform. So I could see him do it, but I want to put an asterisk on it because it all depends on what's going to happen in Dortmund.
Yeah, and if we actually look at Bayer Leverkusen, just even though we haven't really got time to go into them, they actually haven't lost in 9, which is quite impressive in the league. But guys, let's talk about Borussia Dortmund. The Revierderby took place this weekend, which meant that, yes, Dortmund took on Schalke. Chris, you had predicted it to be 2-1. I had predicted it to be, that was to Schalke, 2-0 to Schalke. And Manu had predicted a win to Dortmund. Well, none of us were right. It was a draw.
I was almost right for the first 45 minutes.
That's true. But then I suppose any of us could have come out with a win to either side. It was 4-0 after 20 minutes to Dortmund, and we all thought it was done and dusted and that they were back. Oh, how things went badly. It ended up 4 apiece with a goal right at the end for Schalke. I mean, we talked about this before we came on air, didn't we, Manu, that a 1-1 or maybe even a 2-2 would have been fine. Dortmund probably would have enjoyed that result. But this draw is seen almost worse than a loss, isn't it, after giving away a 4-0 lead?
Yeah, I know, and especially, Bryce, when you think about it, Aubameyang at 4-0 has a chance to put that game away. And then it's 5-0. And no one ever comes back. And I think what makes it even worse is that as great as Schalke's comeback was, Thilo Kehrer should have been sent off with a red card. And I don't mean a second yellow, so I mean a straight red card for the fall against Nur Sahin, right? I think things would have been very different. But even then, you do not give away a 4-0 lead. And then, of course, Aubameyang's sending off, reckless, stupid, mindless. I think it all kind of plays into it. So it's kind of weird because I've seen this happen once, and this was to the German national side on the run up to the World Cup, and it actually helped that German team a lot going forward. That 4-0, where they were up 4-0 against Sweden, and then in the end it ended up with a 4-4 draw. And Germany took a lot away from this game, and really, actually, maybe that result turned him into a world champion in the long run. I'm not sure the same will happen here in Dortmund. It seems. I tweeted out a picture of the Titanic sinking, and that's because that's how I feel. That's the general mood I sense in Dortmund right now. It seems a bit like the end of the world. And when you see the Schalke players, Di Santo, he tweeted out a video of all the players celebrating. They were celebrating like they won the championship after this game. And I think that really mirrors the mood in the two camps right now.
Yeah, things are pretty bleak in Dortmund. Chris, we've spoke, haven't we, that if results didn't change quickly, that Peter Bosz could possibly have to move on. I mean, is this going to be the final nail in the coffin?
Well, I read a report midweek where he said himself he had 2 games to save his Dortmund career, and they were against Tottenham and Schalke. And although they drew on the last one, you could say this is as worse as a loss for me. If you're 4-0 up at half-time and in total control, which they were, then to lose it second half. I mean, maybe we should give a lot of credit to Tedesco, because he made some tactical changes at the right time. I think a few coaches may have waited till half-time, but he brought them on. He made his tactical changes just before half-time, and I can only imagine what the score would have been had he gone with those that he brought on originally. I thought the young American lad, Weston McKennie, I thought, he picked up an early yellow card very, very early on 3 minutes, and he sort of was lost after that. And I think his immaturity, and he used that in regards to his age, not his attitude, his immaturity in years, singled him out as someone that was going to get sent off. And obviously he brought Gutzecker on, who I think changed that middle in the second half himself and showed what an excellent player he was. And I think you could tell at 4-2 that it was going to happen. 4-1, 4-1, Bergstaller scores a great header. Our man Guido Bergstaller, who we've championed from, the day he moved to Schalke as a good player, he scores a great goal. But then to score, seconds or minutes later, there's as it stands on the scorecard, it's 61 and 65, but we round minutes up within football to goals on that. There's a little bit less in truth on that. And once that second goal goes in, and they've in essence got 2 and 3.5 minutes, you can feel it. And there's a little area where Dortmund have got some chances, but as soon as Aubameyang is sent off for what is a stupid foul, it's absolutely no need for him to make the challenge where he's done. It's a petulant foul, and he's sent off. And it was round about 72 where Dortmund had got themselves back in, and they potentially could have looked like they could have gone on and maybe got a winner and scored that 5th one to make it 5-2. And I don't think Schalke would have come back from that. But instead what happens is Aubameyang gets sent off, and then Castro comes on and picks up a yellow card instantly, so he's on a referee's radar. So then he's got to take his foot off the gas a little bit. And then all of a sudden, Schalke get the balance of play back in, and they go up and Caliguri scores a late goal on 86. And as soon as that goal went in, I was watching it with my son, and I said, this is a draw. It's got a draw written all over it. And it was, and Naldo scores a fantastic header. And I think Dortmund will be crying because it's almost a copycat goal of the one that puts them out of the Europa League last season, where they get a little bit weak and a little bit conscious of what's going on around them, and they collapse. And it's bad. Sorry, it was 2 seasons ago, wasn't it, when they went out the Europa League? But it's a similar, and I don't know. It shows that there's a mental strength that's missing, because At 4-2, Aubameyang's a big game player. He should know what can happen at a very crucial time. I mean, and that is a crucial time. It's 72 minutes. It's probably the most crucial time of the game. It's gone to 4-2 very quickly from 4-0, and he should have the wherewithal to be looking to not disenfranchise his team by getting sent off. He should be looking to be one of the big characters to drive it on, but he doesn't. He slips. He slips and he out of character, and he gives away, as I said, a stupid foul. But from then on in, it's not good for Bosz. So I don't know what happens this week. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes, but I think it's all key on who they brought in. And they tried desperately to get Lucien Favre last season, didn't they? And didn't get him. And then Bosz is not second to that, but he wasn't their first choice. And now whether that starts to well on everybody's mind, especially Mr. Watzke's mind, can he go out and get Lucien Favre to bring him in? But something needs to happen at Dortmund because, the players looked done at the end. And there's a massive fight towards the end of the match as well. And that just shows how frustrated they were and how happy Schalke were. But to be 4-0 up against your arch rivals, your arch enemy from round the corner, and to drop 4 goals in second half, which is probably as worst as they played all season, and I've seen them play some horrendous football this season, but the last 15-20 minutes of that game was atrocious.
Yeah, actually, Chris, I got news on Peter Bosz. So I talked to someone who's very close to the club, and he has the Bayer Leverkusen game to turn things around. If he loses in Leverkusen, that's it. It's game over. And the way they've been playing, there's no way they're going to beat Bayer Leverkusen. It's really interesting. Some of the things that you hear too is fitness. I think he's known as the Dutch egg in England. He is involved with the fitness.
Oh, Raymond van Houten.
Yes, that guy. He's they call him the white egg on an orange background in Germany, and he does the training control of for Peter Bosz, and fitness has been a big issue. Of course, Van Houten believes in less is more, right? Apparently that doesn't quite work. So I think there's a big fitness issue, and the word is, of course, that Peter Bosz will be gone if he doesn't beat Bayer Leverkusen. They will bring someone in. Of course, the big issue is there is no one available, because he was their 4th choice in the summer. So number 1 choice was Julian Nagelsmann. They couldn't get him, right? Lucien Favre wasn't available, and Peter Stöger stayed in Köln, and then they ended up with Peter Bosz. And a big problem too is, and you've seen this time and time again, Dutch coaches, they really struggle with German football. And the reason for that is that they're very, we call in German, beratungsresistent. They're not very good at taking advice from others. And he's not flexible enough with his tactics. And I think that his football, as wonderful and beautiful it is, it doesn't fit the Bundesliga, because Bundesliga is so strong. The Bundesliga is so strong when it comes to physical elements. No league in Europe has higher ratings when it comes to sprints, when it comes to running. Those are very important factors, and you won't be able to, no matter how good your philosophy is and how good your style and how beautiful it is, those are basics that you need to be able to comprehend when you play football in Germany. And if they don't exist, you lose. And I think this Borussia Dortmund side, and was dead after the 60th minute. There was nothing there on the pitch anymore. They were empty. They were gone. And this has been a case now for weeks, and that makes it really difficult, I think. And I think this could set an avalanche, because Watzke and Zorc fired Tuchel, a coach who was very good. Coached him to the best second place finish in the history of German football, and they let him go, and they hired Peter Bosz, and it really backfired on them. And I think they will have to justify this to their fans, and they will also likely have to find a coach who can do better, and that's going to be very difficult.
Well, can I just ask? I'll put a few questions to the both of you. We've seen Bayern Munich. They obviously got rid of Ancelotti, brought in Heinkes to do them till the end of the season, possibly longer, but it looks like the end of the season until Tuchel comes in. Could Borussia Dortmund possibly do the same thing? Just bring someone in, maybe an ex-player, an ex-coach, or someone that would do a short-term job? If so, who would that be? And is it a possibility to get their number one choice from last summer, Nagelsmann, this summer coming? I mean, are these possibilities, Chris?
Oh, to bring in Julian Nagelsmann, I don't think he would look at that in a positive light at the moment. I mean, he's flying with Hoffenheim, isn't he? If you look at what he's done in such a short time, he's got the ability to build something there. And he may look as in that Thomas Tuchel wasn't given the ability to build something, and then Peter Bosz has come in and has had a horrendous time and has been given the short shrift. If I'm a young coach and I've seen, two coaches come and go in as many seasons, probably would hang on in my current job. And do they bring someone in? That's the good one. But if they get rid of Bosz, then they'll have to go all out for whoever they have in mind. And maybe that's what they might be doing this week, is seeing who they can bring in, because like Manu, I can't see them beaten by Leverkusen this weekend. Leverkusen have been excellent. Dortmund haven't been the best travellers either, especially of late. And you don't know how the players are feeling. The players look a bit unhappy. So if they know that, we've seen players at many clubs throughout many leagues throw games in order to get rid of their manager. And I wouldn't be surprised if that was the happen.
Yeah, we'll just have to see how the next week pans out, but things do not look good for Peter Bosz and his men. Guys, that more or less does it for this week. Manu, I'm sure you've got plenty going on, but what would you like to draw people's attention to, or where can they find you on the likes of Twitter?
Yeah, people can follow me at Twitter at Manuel Veth. And yeah, I'm at the Fortuna Düsseldorf Dynamo Dresden game tomorrow. So if you listen to this podcast and you want to hang out and just flag me down, that's fine. Just come and say hello. There's going to be a match report on that. And then, of course, I have a couple of stories on the line. I want to write something on Basel, the club, that is. And then, of course, we're going to closely follow what's going on at Borussia Dortmund. So, yeah, plenty coming at Football Grad Live.
Yeah, very exciting game for you tomorrow as well, because Dusseldorf can actually go top of the league. They'll be passing Holstein Kiel, so quite entertaining there. Chris, what have you got going on this week? You're always busy as well. What would you like to draw people's attention to?
Well, I have been quite quiet recently on social media. You can catch me on Twitter at Chris78Williams. You can find me there. I'll be doing all the imagery for Football Grad this week for the games coming up. So, just keep an eye on there if you want to catch me.
Some fantastic images too. Fantastic stuff. Really good stuff.
Yeah, you're never that quiet, Chris. And Manu, you're always busy as well. The Football Grad Network's always busy, isn't it? So there's going to be plenty coming out, guys. So if you want to go to Twitter and follow at Football Grad Live, there'll be plenty of content on there. Thanks for joining us. If you could head over to iTunes, we'd really appreciate it if you just take a second to rate us or give us some positive feedback on there. That'd be much appreciated. If you want to follow me, Bryce Dunn on Twitter, you can find me at Bryce Dunn 11. Apart from that, well, it's going to be an interesting weekend. Next week we could be talking about a few managerial changes, but let's see what happens. Auf Wiedersehen.
Ich warte seit Wochen auf diesen Tag und tanz vor Freude über den Asphalt. Als wär's ein Rhythmus, als gäb's ein Lied, das mich immer weiter durch die Straßen zieht. Komm dir entgegen, dich abzuholen.
Imagine if you could shop the shelves of all your local liquor stores at the same time. Well, spoiler alert, you can with Drizzly, the #1 alcohol delivery app. Drizzly lets you compare prices from local liquor stores on a huge selection of beer, wine, and spirits, then get them delivered right to your door in under 60 minutes. And right now, Drizzly is giving all new customers $5 off their first order. Just enter promo code SAVE5 at checkout. Download the Drizzly app or go to drizzly.com. That's DRIZLY.com.
Thank you for listening to Believe. You can show support to your host by subscribing to the show and giving us a 5-star rating on your preferred platform. Check us out at Believe.com and search for BLEAV on YouTube.